Hello and welcome to the first session of our module. In this session we're going to introduce the field of media literacy and to give a definition, outlining what media literacy is and why it's crucial for today's citizen to cope with the needs of information society. First of all, it's important to define what is literacy. Literacy, in a broad sense, refers to the acquisition of any kind of code that facilitate communication. So, if we understand civilization as a state of technical development of evolution in the man-made environment, we understand that each technical development, each evolution develops its own code and languages. So it's obvious that each specific civilization needs a specific literacy. So let's have a look into history and understanding which specific competencies correspond to each specific stage of development in civilization. So if we look at what we call antiquity, we all know that antiquity was characterized by oral communication. So knowledge was only perpetuated and transmitted orally. So what is the key competence of this civilization? The oral competence. We need to wait until the Middle Ages with the standardization of the written alphabet to see how civilizations start to organize the memory around written text. So the main literacy, the main competence become reading and writing. Actually, even today when we talk about literacy, if I say literacy, everybody would understand the capacity of reading and writing. But we have to wait until the invention of the press to see a real revolution. With the invention of the press, literacy gets extended. So the key competence become the print literacy. And the second big revolution happens with the first industrial revolution and the invention of the electronic media. So radio, telephone, cinema, and finally television. Here we see the development, the beginning of mass society. Television can represent actually the symbol of mass society. So what is the key competence for living in mass society and understanding the media of mass society? This competence will obviously be audiovisual competence, audiovisual literacy. The second and last big revolution happens with the invention of the internet and the beginning of the information society. The digitalization of information required a new competence. This new competence is media competence, and this new literacy is media literacy. Before getting into a definition, let's have a look at the information society and understand what information society is about. Information society can be defined as a society where the creation, distribution, dissemination, and use of information is the most significant economic, political, and cultural activity. So, information is the main resource of our society. As steam power was the technology standing behind industrial society, information technology can be seen as the catalyst of the change in our organization and in our society. How did it happen? As we see, the switch from analogical and electronic devices to digital devices allows the digitalization of information. That is to say, information can be produced in a massive quantity, quicker, easily, that is to say, cheaper. That created or impulsed an explosion of knowledge. We can have an access of information potentially everywhere and always, and everybody can have this access, or to say it better, all the people that can have access to these technologies. So of course these technologies created this explosion of knowledge, but we need to take into account and remember that the emergence of digital media did not kill the existence of pre-existing media. So we are in a society where the old mass media coexists with the new digital media. We call this phenomenon media convergence because they mix up, they fuse together in multi-platform media. Together with this, we need to stress out that this society is also exposed to a quick and constant change. Why? Because since this society follows technology and technology changes so quickly, even society changes so quickly. From a sociological perspective, we can define this society as a liquid society. As you probably know, this definition comes from Zygmunt Bauman. What is liquidity? It's the idea that in a society where everything changes so quickly, we completely lost our durable reference, and durability is not actually a value anymore. Everything changes, nothing is black and white, everything loses its black and white definition, becomes gray, becomes liquid, becomes absolutely finite. So said this: what kind of literacy do we need in the information society? What kind of competencies do we need in order to live in the information society? And here is when they discover media literacy. So media literacy, as defined by Tornero and Varis, is the process of assimilating and using the codes involved with the contemporary media system, as well as the operative skills needed to properly use the technological system in which these codes are based. That means if in the television era the audiovisual competence was the competence needed, why in the information literacy, digital literacy is not enough? We already mentioned media convergence. That means media literacy is a literacy that, first of all, is transversal. They say media literacy should be present everywhere: in formal education, in informal education, in the family, NGOs, civil society, media industry themselves, institution. So media literacy should be transversal, involves all the media, not only the new media. It involves a book, it involves a newspaper, it involves television, and encompasses, for this reason, it encompasses all the other previous existing literacy. So media literacy is a sum of pre-existing literacy and the new literacies. So how can we define media literacy? Once we have an idea of what it is, we need an operational definition. We need to make this definition operational. Many efforts have been done, both from the UNESCO and from the European Commission. We choose this definition, that is the definition accepted by the European Commission, because it makes media literacy a measurable concept. This definition says that media literacy is the ability to access, understand, critically evaluate media context and different aspects of the media, and to create communication in a variety of contexts. So, seeing this, let's analyze which competencies media literacy require. As you see, we represent this as a pyramid. This pyramid was created, is quoted by a study from 2007 called Current Trends and Approaches to Media Literacy in Europe, that you can find in bibliography. A pyramid gives the idea of going up. The more you know, the more you can do. At the bottom of this pyramid, we can find environmental factors that, of course, have an impact on how the individual interact with the media. At the upper level, we see personal competencies, and at the top, we see social competencies. So let's have a look to the environmental factors. Environmental factors can be divided into two. On the one hand, we have media availability. Let's say, how many media, what is the quantity of the quality of the media that an individual has an access to. In this graph, we see the global digital divide that stresses out that media availability is still very unequal in the world. So we have the big global divide that is basically reflecting the traditional north-south divide, but we also have internal divide, generational divide, gender divide, urban-rural divide, etc., etc. On the other side, we find other environmental factors that are, on the one hand, the educational system. Of course, the organization of the educational system has an impact on how much an individual is media literate. If media literacy is considered by the formal curriculum from the very beginning, of course we will have better success. And on the other side, we have the socio-economical aspect. That is, say, first of all, are media free in a society? Is there censorship? Is the media industry involved in that? Except all this should be taken into account. At the upper level, we find the use, the personal competencies. What are the personal competencies? We can divide them into two. The first is the use capacity. They say the technical skill. Can the individual use the technology? But use is not enough. In order to be media literate, you also have to be critical towards the media. So say you really need to benefit from the media. I don't go in depth into critical understanding because the second session will be dedicated to this. At the top of the pyramid, we finally find the communicative abilities. So once an individual can have an access, can critically understand and can use the media, then this individual can properly communicate. That is to say, if the information society is based on information, if this individual can properly use this information, this individual can be able to participate in the society and can exercise a full active citizenship. So, to conclude, we can say that media literacy empowers citizens, so it's the prerequisite for the exercise of an active citizenship. So, without an equality in access, without an equality in the use, and an active use of media, the political process cannot work. So the sustainability of the public sphere actually requires media literacy to extend to all the citizens. So to conclude, media literacy is a prerequisite for political participation and for an healthy democracy.